Well, hey everybody, my name is Kent. I'm lead pastor here at Epic, and whether you are at Center City or Fairmount or Roxborough or here at Parkside this morning, I'm so glad that you are at church. And part of the reason why is because of what we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Here we go. Once upon a time, there was a chair in our church with your name on it. And you didn't know it, and we didn't know it either because you hadn't been here yet. In fact, for some of you, before you ever walked through the doors of one of our churches, church was like the furthest thing from your mind as possible. But you had one of those friends that kept bringing it up all the time. Like, hey, I go to this church, you need to come, you need to come, you need to come. And people would bring it up around you, and you're like, yeah, I used to do that, but, I'm trying to quit. Or man, yeah, I've never really done that, and I'm not trying to start. And so that's kind of maybe your approach to church. But you had one of those friends that was relentless. They just would not give up. And so maybe they were a coworker, maybe they were a family member, maybe they were just a friend, a boyfriend or girlfriend, but they were relentless. And they resorted to all kinds of tactics. They started to bribe you with stuff. They're like, listen, if you just come to church, we'll go to this amazing lunch and I'll pay. Tried to bribe you with food. They tried to tell you how handsome or how pretty all the girls are or how handsome all the guys are. And maybe if you come to church, you might leave with a number. I'm just saying, you should give it a shot. It might work for you. And so they tried to bribe you, tried to talk you into it. And finally, really, just to kind of shut them up, you're like, fine, I'll come. And you came to church and you came with them. And when you first walked in, the very first thing you notice is that, wow, this is not just a bunch of people in their 70s. Like, you had no idea that church wasn't just for people that were in their 70s. You had no idea that there could be a church full of people that aren't just in their 70s. And as you looked around, you begin to notice that there were actually a lot of people that looked just like you. And not just that, there were also a bunch of people that looked different than you. There are people of all colors. There are people who are black, people who are white, people who are Latino, people who are other. Anybody else have to check the other box? Right? Isn't that annoying? It's like, other. Come on, man, just list a few more. I'm just saying, right? So that was a little different. You're like, wow, that's interesting. If you brought kids with you, then you had to take them up to our kids area and drop them off. And when you did, you're looking around, you're like, well, what in the world? Like, this is nice, like it's secure, it seems organized. All these workers all have matching shirts on. They actually look like they have a plan for what's about to happen with all these children. Like, they got this stuff together, and you're like, what's that about? And you're starting to wonder if, do you have to pay? Is this something you pay for? Because surely this would be a service that you should pay for. Like, this is not, they don't just do this for free. And if you can drop off your kid, is there like a number of services limit? Like, could you go out for breakfast and just come back and get them afterwards? Do they have like an evening service? You can just catch them after dinner? Is that something that you could do? So you're trying to figure that out. You're looking around for where to pay, and you're like, man, they set up all this stuff, but they didn't set up the little kiosk to pay, so I guess today's just free, right? You walk downstairs, and then you begin to notice that, man, all these people seem really happy to be here. And you're like, what's that about? I thought this was church. Nobody's happy to go to church. Like, why are these people so happy to be here? And you're trying to put that all together, and then it hits you. You realize, it's the coffee, right? It's got to be the coffee. Like, surely these people are putting something in that coffee. I know how that works, right? So someone offered you some coffee, and you're like, oh, no, thank you. You're not going to get me. No. I know your tricks. Kool-Aid coffee. It's all the same. You people. Use your cults. I know how that works, right? And so you walked in the auditorium, and then the music started, and that was great until you looked around and it looked like a bunch of people had questions. They were just kind of just like this, and you're like, what? Why is everybody doing that? And then one lady had 2 questions, and she was like this, and you wanted to tell her, look, lady, I don't think that's how this works. Like, I don't think they're going to stop singing to answer your 2 questions. So just put your hands down. Like, what are you doing? What's that about, right? So you kind of made it through that, and then the music was over, and you finally got to sit down, and you sat down in your seat, and then someone walked up and kind of oriented you to the service and let you know some stuff, and then they said, and at this time, we're going to link up to our other locations. And they explained that there's like 4 other locations around the city, and you're like, what? There's more than just one of these? There's like 4? What is it, like a franchise? They got a church franchise? Like, what? I knew this was a cult, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, but now it's too late. You're sitting there and you're like, all right, well, I'll just make it through this and make my way out. And all of a sudden, some guy showed up on the screen or showed up on the stage, and he talked for about 35 minutes or so. And you just sat there shocked because, number one, like he was halfway normal. And number two, you stayed awake the whole time. And neither of those you expected to happen. You're like, wow, that's impressive that happened. And then before you knew it, it was over. Like they were done. And you were like, it's done? Like it's already over? Before lunch, it's over? Are you serious? Like we can still go eat lunch around lunchtime? That's possible now? This is amazing. And so you left and then you went home and you just couldn't stop thinking about church because for the first time ever, it was like, wait, that made sense. Like that was actually helpful. Like I actually got something out of that. Like that was amazing. That was amazing to me. And I don't know, maybe it wasn't the next week or even the week after that or even a month after that, but eventually you came back. And then you came back again and again. And then something really crazy happened. You're at work, you're talking to your friend, and somehow church came up, and so you're talking about this church that you go to, and somehow, you don't even know exactly how you did it, but you think you might have invited them, and they were like, I'll come, and you're like, oh no, they're coming, right? And for the first time ever, you experience church through their eyes, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're trying to explain everything to them. You're like, listen, all right, this is where the kids go, it's free, this is the coffee, it's safe. During the music, that lady over there is going to look like she's got questions. She's got no questions. She just does that. This is not a franchise. These are the things you need to know. And you're trying to explain everything away because you want it to be perfect. You want it to be the best experience ever. And you hope that whoever's teaching you're like, all right, 2 rules. You got to be funny and you got to say something meaningful. Just that's it. Those 2 things. Like say something funny and something meaningful. And to your like delight, they did. They said something funny. They said something meaningful. It was a great time. And afterwards, you asked your friend, you're like, hey, what'd you think? And they were like, I didn't hate it. And you're like, yes, did not hate it. That is awesome score. And so you just kind of find yourself at this place where you just kept coming back over and over and over again. And now all of a sudden, this place really matters to you. And it's because it's really making a difference in your life. That's some of your stories. Others of you, that's not your story at all. Because the very first time you showed up at one of our churches, you had already emailed, called, and DM'd the location pastor to let them know that you were coming. Like you let them know ahead of time. And you knew that there'd be coffee, so you came with your own like personalized coffee mug with like this really cool hipster font on it that said mornings are for coffee and Jesus, and you walked in with your mug and you're like, look, it says Jesus on it, everybody. And right, and then during the music, you didn't even have to look up at the screen because you knew all the words to all the songs. In fact, you're like singing a special harmony part. You're like, like you're adding stuff. People around you are like, what are you doing? Like, where, you're adding little in-between parts. You're like, yes, he did. And you're like, yes, he did. That's not even on the screen. Read the words on the screen. Don't be extra. What is that about? God's not even up there, And so you sang through that part and had a great time. And then as if on cue, during the first course of the second song, sure enough, you had a question. And everybody around you was like, what is that about? Oh my gosh. And it didn't take long before you found yourself in the same boat as that other person with a different story, where this place really started to matter to you because it was really starting to make a difference in your life. And so if either of those are your story, or if your story falls someplace in the middle, then you are exactly who I want to talk to today because I need your help. I need you to help us prepare for someone who's a lot like you, who just hasn't found their chair yet. And they haven't found their chair because they're not here yet. And they're not here, but you need to know that they will be. Like they're coming. They will be here. Like right now, they sleep in on Sundays, mostly because of what happens late on Saturday right now. But they've got a friend, or they've got a mom, or they've got a grandmama, or they've got a coworker who's been praying for them, and they really love them. And they've been praying that they would find a place just like this with a chair with their name on it. And one day, after getting tired of being asked to come with them, they're finally going to give in to all those invitations, and they're going to come, and they're going to give it one shot. Like many of you are just going to give it one shot. And when they come, we need to make sure that we're ready for them. There's others who aren't here yet, but they will be one day. And they're not here because right now, like they just found out that they got the job in Philly. Or they just found out that they're going to go to school in Philly. And so not long from now, they're going to find themselves in the middle of this big city, surrounded by people, but all alone. And I need you to help me make sure that we've got a chair with their name on it. There are some people who aren't here yet, but they will be because they're coming. But right now, they're not here because, honestly, church is the furthest thing from their mind. But the truth is that God has a plan, and he's at work to change all of that. And there's a series of circumstances that are about to lead them to the place where they might come walking through one of these doors. And when they do, I'm going to need you to make sure that we're ready for them and that we've got a chair with their name on it. They're coming. And so over the next few minutes, I want to talk with you about one way in particular that you can help us be ready for when they get here. Well, here's how you can help. I want to challenge you today. I want to encourage you today. I want to do everything I can to persuade every single one of you to step up in your giving. Yeah, some of you are like, oh, great. I came on that Sunday. We're talking about giving today. Oh my gosh. Listen, you need to know this. We've locked all the doors. You cannot leave, whatever location you're at, right? Unless there's a fire. Please don't start a fire just so you can leave. We might let you out if you threaten to start a fire. So at any rate, we're going to talk about giving today, and it's really important because you have no idea how important that is. And what I want to challenge you to do as it relates to your giving is different than just stepping up in random giving. All right, it's different than just that. So, in fact, let me define random giving for you. Random giving is that I'm going to give to some things some of the time. That's random giving. And so maybe this past year, you can remember when we collected money for flood victims in Houston, or collected money for hurricane victims in Puerto Rico, or when we collected money to get backpacks and school supplies for kids who don't have them. And if you've given or gave in one or more of those things, then you should know that was random giving. And nothing wrong with random giving. Random giving is important. Lots and lots of good and great things happen because of that kind of giving. But what I want to challenge you to do today is something that I think is even better than that. And that's what, for the purposes of our conversation today, we're going to refer to as this. It's what we're going to call next level giving. Next level giving. And next level giving goes like this. I don't just give to some things some of the time, but I've made a decision to give to God's thing every time. And here's what I mean by that. That every time I receive some kind of income, I'm going to make sure that I give a certain percentage of that back to God through the church. Every time. Every time I receive some kind of income, I'm going to make sure that I give a specific percentage of that back to God through his church. Now, here's what you need to know about this kind of giving. It's not that flashy. There's not a whole lot of emotion associated with it. This is not the kind of giving that you give or do because the pastor stood up and gave an inspiring message and showed you pictures of kids that are in need. No, this is the kind of giving that's just kind of steady and plodding along kind of giving that at the end of the day and over time, I'm telling you, has the potential to do so much more good than just the kind of knee-jerk reaction random giving that we're used to as Americans. Because that's the kind of giving we're used to. It's show me the picture of the puppy, and if you tug on my heart enough, then maybe I'll give, right? And it's not that random giving is bad. No, random giving is good, but next level giving can be so much better. And here's the reason why. Random giving is about intervention, while next level giving is about prevention. Random giving is about intervention, while next level giving is about prevention. Random giving is about giving toward a crisis. There's some type of crisis, something happened, there's a need, and I'm gonna give to help fix that need. I'm gonna fix that crisis, right? It's after the fact. It's intervention. I'm gonna intervene. Next level giving is about prevention. Next level giving is about giving to something that has the power to prevent a crisis from ever happening in the first place. Totally different. For example, let me put it this way. Would you rather give to an organization that prevents child abuse or give to an organization that rescues children who've been abused? Which one? It's a trick question. Both, right? Those are both good things, right? Right? It's good to give toward organizations that prevent child abuse, but it's also good to give towards organizations that rescue children that have been abused or in abusive type situations. They're both important things, but if you've ever looked into the eyes of an abused child, when you look at them, you'll be glad that they've been rescued, but you'll wish with all your heart that they never would have had to be rescued in the first place. That's the reason why prevention is so much better than intervention. It's not that intervention is bad, it's just prevention is so much better. And this is true in every area of your life. Think about this. It's true in your marriage. Like if you can do something to prevent a marriage problem, that's better than waiting for an intervention to fix a marriage problem, right? Come on, married people. That is true, right? It's true with your health. If you can do something to prevent a health problem, that's better than waiting until you need an intervention to fix the health problem. It's true financially. If you can do something to prevent a financial problem, that's better than waiting until you need an intervention to fix a financial problem. It's true even with silly things like your car, right? If you can do something to prevent a car problem, that is better than waiting to need an intervention in order to fix a car problem. Prevention is always better than intervention, but we don't think that way. Like we almost always lean toward intervention, not toward prevention. In our marriage, we wait and hope that the counselor is going to be able to fix it. As it relates to our health, we wait and hope that the doctor is going to have a pill that can fix it or a surgery that can fix it. As it relates to our cars, we wait and hope that the mechanic can fix it. Cheap, because we need it cheap. We need it fixed cheap. Come on, anybody else need it fixed cheap? I need it fixed cheap. I'm not trying to get it fixed expensive. I need it fixed cheap, right? And as it relates to our finances, we wait and hope that we win the lottery. It's like, oh, that'll fix it. If I could just win that lottery, we'd be all right. And so we naturally lean towards intervention, even though prevention is so much better. And truth is, we do the same thing with our giving. You see, random giving is for intervention. There's a crisis, and I'm going to give randomly to help meet that need. That's giving after the fact, right? It's intervention. But what we don't realize is that by God's design, next level giving or systematically giving to a great church is giving for prevention. And by great church, I mean a church that's all about reaching people and serving people and making a difference in the city. It's not about maintaining a little social club for church people. No, it's about creating a place where all people can have their lives changed by God. It's about creating a place where all people are taught to take the hope and life that they discover while they're sitting in their chair to all the rest of the people they rub shoulders with throughout the rest of the week. That's what it's about. Listen, you talk about prevention. Think about this. Over the last 9 years, how many marriages haven't fallen apart because of what the couples have learned sitting in their chair? How many marriages? How many relationships have been spared because of what couples have learned sitting in their chair when they found their chair? And to take it a step further, what kind of impact did that then have on their children because they stayed together? Think about this. How many wrong paths have teenagers not gone down because of what they learned sitting when they found their chair, or sitting in a circle with a leader from our youth group called Collide. How many poor decisions and poor choices haven't been made because of the relationships that they were able to build with people that are a little further down the road, a little more mature than them, that can challenge them and encourage them and pray for them and say, don't settle for something less than what God has planned for you. How many poor decisions weren't made because of that? How many 20-somethings, 20-something guys and 20-something girls haven't completely wrecked their lives relationally, physically, emotionally, sexually, because of what happened in their life when they found their chair? Or because of what happened in their life as a result of the people that God brought into their life when they found their chair? How many people haven't turned to pills or haven't turned to alcohol to mask their pain because they discovered the one from whom our hope comes from when they found their chair? How many lives have been changed? How many futures have been altered? How many families have been impacted because of what happened when they found their chair? How different is our city because of all the lives that have been changed in these chairs? How many people's eternities have been changed because of what happened in their heart when they found their chair? You see, what happens here is so incredibly powerful because it's preventative. It's preventative. And I'm all for rescue. We will always be a church that rescues, but the hidden power and potential of the church isn't in the rescues. The real power and potential of the church is in what we together can do to help prevent in the lives of so many people. The real power and potential of the church is all the heartbreaking stories that will never have to be told because they never happened. Prevention. And for all of you who are next level givers, because every single time you get paid, you've just made a decision that you're going to give a certain percentage of your income back to God through His church. I want you to know, I know it's not glamorous. I know it's not all that sexy. I know there's not a whole lot of emotion tied to it. I know in your mind, you think you're just kind of helping the church pay the bills. You're just helping the church do what the church does. I know in your mind, you're thinking, oh, I'm just doing a little bit to help pay for staff or pay to rent buildings or pay to lease offices or just kind of help the church be able to buy equipment and get projectors and get sound systems and get cameras and technology and supplies for the kids and be able to do events. I'm just doing a little bit to help the church be able to do those things. But look at me. You have no idea all that you've done to actually make a difference in so many people's lives just because you've done something as simple as systematically giving to your church over time. That's the power of next level giving. So here's my challenge to you. If this place matters to you, because it's made a difference in your life, I want you to step up to next level giving by deciding to give a percentage of your income back to God every time you receive some. Every time. And when we talk about giving, when we talk about honoring God with our money and leveraging what God's given us for His purposes, we always talk about God's plan for how we should do money. And it's pretty simple. I always give it to you like this. It's 3 words, right? Give, save, live. And here's essentially God's plan for how we should do our money. We should give first, save second, live on the rest. Give first, save second, live on the rest. We give first. When you give first, it honors God. When you save second, that builds wealth over time, right? You save second, it builds wealth over time. When you live on the rest, that teaches contentment. And all of those things are important. Now, here's what I know. Every single person in this auditorium and every single person at all of our locations this morning who is over the age of 30, every single one of us wish that we could go back to our 20s and do money this way. Every single one of us. Think about how different your life financially would be if you would have done money this way. Think about it. First of all, you would have given away a lot of money, which would have brought a lot of joy to your life because you've been able to do something really significant other than buy just another pair of Jordans. So that's one, right? And all the other stuff that you spent money on and you don't even know where it is anymore. Come on, right? Number two, your savings account would be fat right now. Come on, think about it. If you've been saving since you were in your 20s, you'd be like, what? Are you serious? This is awesome, right? It'd be amazing. And you'd be content because you would have mastered by now the art of living on less. Just living below your means, right? You wouldn't have near the financial stress you have, near the financial challenges, because you did money this way. You give first, you save second, and you live on the rest. Live on the rest. Now, God's plan for money, it's important for you to know that because I need you to know that talking about giving at church, it's not about trying to get something from you. This is about really wanting something for you. Man, I want you to win when it comes to how you manage your money. I want you to do great. I want you to be able to look at your bank account and be like, nailed it. Like, I want you to drop the mic and be like, boom, I'm killing that. And you can. God gives us a plan for that. It's give first, save second, and live on the rest. I want that for you. But talking about money in church is also about wanting something great for our city. It's about wanting something great for Philadelphia. Right? So you see, let me explain this. This is going to be hard for many of you to believe, but the truth is that 75% of our church doesn't really do much to support our church financially. 75%. Like when I look at that number, first of all, it hurts my feelings. It's just like, oh, that is so sad. Like 75% of us don't do much to support our church financially. 75%, that's 3 out of 4 of us are just like, 3 out of 4 of us. And so that's a little, it hurts my feelings. Number 2, it's a little depressing. And let me tell you why it's depressing. It's depressing because I feel like I haven't done my job. Like as a pastor and as a leader, I've obviously not done a very good job because only 25% of us really believe in our vision and our mission enough to support it with our dollars. Like only 25% of us. That means that as a leader, somehow I've only managed to inspire and compel and really disciple because giving it's not a management issue, it's a heart issue. It's a spiritual issue. And so in so many ways, I look at this and I'm like, man, somehow I've only been able to inspire, compel, and really disciple, because if you're a follower of Jesus, that should affect how you do your money. I've been only able to disciple 1/4 of our church to the place that they'd be willing to put God ahead of their money. That's depressing. But it's not just depressing because if you think about it, it's also kind of amazing. And here's what I mean by that. When I think about how over the last 9 years, we've been able to do all that we've been able to do as a church. Are you kidding me? 4 locations, the kind of growth we've seen, as many people as we've interacted with and touched shoulders with and reached. We've been able to do everything we've been able to do as a church with just 25% horsepower? Are you kidding me? That's remarkable. Everybody's scared to clap. Everybody's like, if I clap, do I have to give? Yes. Now, if that statement that, man, look what we've been able to do with just 25% horsepower, if that makes you think, well, obviously you don't need the rest of us to give. You're doing pretty good on your own. You were wrong. We need you. We need you to give. We need the other 75% of you to give. But we don't need you to give to pay rent. The other 25% of us have carried you on that one. We don't need you to give so we can pay rent. We don't need you to give so that we can pay salaries of our staff. We don't need you to give so that we can keep doing what we've been doing. The other 25% of us have covered that one. But we need you to give, because last time I checked, our vision was to reach every person in the city, every single person in the city. You see, we're about making it so that every person in and around Philadelphia, when they think church, they don't think, ugh, they think yes. I want people to think, oh man, like I don't really know those guys, but I love those guys. I hear what they're doing. I hear the difference that they're making in the city. I hear about the lives that are changed because of what happens there. Man, I don't even believe in God, but I thank God for those people. I don't even know how that works, but I do. I'm so glad that they're here. I'm so glad for the impact that they're making in our city. I'm so grateful for what God is doing. I'm so grateful for what's happening. I don't even know if it's God or not. I'm so grateful for those people. I want people to look at the church and go, oh man, that's a great place. Like I'm not one, but I'll hire one because those are good people. Do you know what I'm saying? And we've been doing this on 25%. Imagine what we could do. Imagine the dent we can make in homelessness if the other 75%. Imagine how many locations we could start if the other 75%. Imagine the difference we can make in our school system, in serving kids in our city, in giving them the things that they need that they can't get. If the other 75%. Imagine the difference we can make in the special needs community and how we could serve them in an even greater way than what we do already. If the other 75%. As much as I want everyone to give a percentage every time they receive income, I realize that we're all at different places when it comes to our giving. We're all at different places when it comes to learning what it means to honor God with our finances, with our money. It's true. And so we created this graphic that I think might be able to help you put handles on it. And so for some of you, let me put it this way. For some of you, your next step might be just to become a first-time giver, right? And here, I want to show you these steps because one, I want you to be able to identify where you're at on this. And two, I want to challenge you not just to take a next step, but I want to challenge you to a specific step. So for some of you, you've never given before. So your next step would just be to give for the very first time. And here's what I want you to know. That's a big deal. I mean, we care about our money. And for someone to give money to God for the first time, man, that's a huge deal. And so one, I want to be able to celebrate you for taking that step. And I want to challenge you to take what I think is a significant spiritual step, because it's not a management thing. It's a spiritual issue. Right? Jesus said, hey, you can't serve both God and money. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that he didn't say you can't serve both God and the devil, right? You would think that's what he would say, right? You know, you would think you can't serve both God and yourself, but Jesus was specific. He said you can't serve both God and money, and I think it's because he knows us better than we know ourselves. And that is that he knows the thing that fights for the affection of our heart more than anything else is not the devil. Like no one says, you know what my problem is? I just keep serving the devil. He knows the thing that fights for our heart the most. He knows the thing that competes with his place in our life the most is our money. So it says, you got to pick. It's not both and. So for some of you, man, I want to encourage you to take a significant spiritual step and give for the first time. Now, after someone gives for the first time, the next step is to give occasionally, right? And the occasional giver is someone who gives what? Occasionally. Nailed it. Oh, way to go, Captain Obvious. Awesome. So the occasional giver gives occasionally. Now the good side of that is, you know, first, there's no real like amount that people give toward that. There's no real rhythm that people give occasionally, just kind of occasionally, haphazardly, whenever it happens. The good thing about that is that it is happening, it is moving in the right direction. The not so great part about giving occasionally is because if you do something occasionally, you'll never do it well. Never. You ever watch someone who just occasionally parallel parks? It's a disaster. It's just like, oh, look at them. Oh my gosh. Put this on YouTube. This is hilarious. Or they're just not good at it because they don't do it, right? Right. Or here's another one. Here's another thing about doing something occasionally. If you do something only occasionally, it never gets easier. Right? You ever go to the gym occasionally? Right? It's always hard. Every time. It never gets easier. Like every single time you got to psych yourself up. You got to pump yourself up. You're like, okay, I'm going to go. I know it's been 8 weeks, but I'm going to go again. And every time it's hard. Every time it's like, ugh. Giving's the same way. If you do it occasionally, every single time it's going to be like, ugh, I hate this. Right? You can't do it occasionally. So once you move from being an occasional giver, sometimes people move on to becoming an intentional giver. An intentional giver is someone who actually does have a plan for their giving. Like they don't leave it to chance. They decide that every time they get paid, they're going to give something. Every time they get paid, they're going to give something. And this is oftentimes the place where people automate their giving. And that is they decide that they're going to give a certain amount, and they decide the frequency with which they're going to give that particular amount, and they set it up to happen automatically, right? And there's, through our website, you can do that, and even through your bank, you can do that. So you can set up automatic giving, and it happens. And here's what's great about that. Automation beats determination every time. Like, it doesn't matter how determined you are to be consistent, you'll never be as consistent as you'll be if you'll just make it automatic. It's true. You just decide this amount, this often, that's what I do. And then you'll be intentional. Now, people move from being an intentional giver to being a percentage giver. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about next level giving. Because a percentage giver is someone who's decided ahead of time that they're going to give God a significant percentage of their income every single time they get some. Like every time they receive income, they're going to give God a specific percentage every single time. And the question is, what percent? Like what percent should I give back to God? Well, the Old Testament teaches a thing called the tithe. And the tithe is just an ancient word that means tenth. And so in Old Testament times, it represented a tenth of your produce. You would give a tenth of your produce, or a tenth of your wheat, or a tenth of your flock, or a tenth of your grain, or a tenth of your corn, or a tenth of your silver, or a tenth of your gold. Now it represents a tenth of your income. So the Old Testament teaches the tithe. The New Testament teaches something beyond the tithe, which is generosity. And so here's what's interesting about that. Every time that Jesus referenced the Old Testament law in the New Testament, he always raised the bar. And so it's fair and it's safe to probably look at that and say, you know what? The Old Testament kind of standard was 10%. Jesus always raised the bar. So my guess would be that 10% is probably a safe place to start. That's probably a good place to start. Look at giving 10% back to God. Now, truth is, that said, there are some of us that have been blessed so much that 10% is like a speed bump. Like you wouldn't even miss that. And some of you are like, must be nice. I don't know who that is. But there's some people that, and the best way I could say, they've been afflicted with affluence. And so these are people that have been so blessed that really 10%, that doesn't represent any sacrifice for you. And so for you, maybe it should be 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 or maybe even 20% if that's the case that you're in. And which leads us to this final step, which is fully surrendered. Fully surrendered. Now, this is the person who says, you know what, God, what portion of my income do you want me to keep? Because I've made the decision just to give the rest to you and your purposes and what you want to do in this world. And this is the person that maybe has gotten to the place in life where they've got so much wealth that they could begin to store it up for themselves later, or just store it up for even generations to come beyond them. But they've decided that in addition to storing up some for themselves and some to be able to pass to their children, but beyond that, they want to be able to really do what's best with it and give toward what God wants to do in the world now. Because there's people who need to find a chair now. And there's people that are looking for hope now. There's people who need to discover God now. Yeah? And so these are people who would be at the place where they would consider themselves fully surrendered and essentially saying, God, everything you've given me comes from you anyways. So what do you want me to do with it? So here's my question. Where are you at on those steps? Where are you at? And my challenge to you, my hope, is that if you are a follower of Jesus, that you would commit to become a percentage giver. That you'd commit every single time that you receive income, that you would give 10% back to God through his church for what God wants to do in this world. That you become a percentage giver. Now listen, I don't want to make this hard for people. And so to help with that, we have this thing called a 90-day automation challenge. And we did this last year, and a lot of people took it, and it made a big difference, and it was super helpful. And here's what it is. Essentially, it's a safety net. It's a 90-day safety net. What we want to challenge you to do over the next 90 days is commit to automate your giving. To just automate your giving. Pick a certain percentage or pick a certain amount that you're going to give, and every single time you get paid, you give that particular amount over the next 90 days. And if after those 90 days you decide that was a bad decision, like if afterwards you're like, oh no, man, I need that back. Listen, here's what we're going to do. Everything that you've given in those 90 days, we'll give you back every single bit of it. Like every cent. No questions asked. No like weird kind of pressure thing. Like no fuss, no muss. We won't be like, why or anything like that. You just give the word and we'll give you back every single thing you gave over the last 90 days. We want to do that because we know that that can be a scary step. And we want to be able to say, hey, man, it doesn't have to be scary. I just want you to try it. I just want you to take a step of faith. I just want you to begin to trust God in that way and see that he's faithful. And so we want to do that for you, okay? It's a 90-day automation challenge. We want everybody to participate. Now, the reason why we want you to automate your giving is because we said it already, automation beats determination every single time. And if you think about it, you already do this in a bunch of other areas of your life, right? When it comes to your retirement savings, like you don't write a check every month for that. And some of you are like, what is a check? Right? When it comes to your college savings, right? You don't, that's the thing, it just happens. You automate it. When it comes to your automatic bill pay, you just pay bills automatically. You've already set that up. Listen, some things in our life are so important that we just set them up to happen automatically. And man, I want to be a church that's full of people who don't let being generous and don't let honoring God with our finances and don't let supporting the mission of the church be optional or leave that to chance. No, man, those things are so important. They should be at the top of our list. And so here's what I want you to do. You can automate any amount that you would like to give. But my challenge to you would be that you would shoot for 10%. To take that step of faith and shoot for 10%. Now listen, you also need to know this. I wouldn't ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. I wouldn't. In fact, all of our pastoral staff, we're all going to be taking the challenge with you. That said, you also need to know this. For Tiffany and I, giving 10% of our income over the next 90 days, that is not much of a challenge. And I'm not bragging. I'm just being honest, and here's why. We've given 10% plus of every penny we've made since before we were married. We've just always done that. We've just always done money that way. We've always given at least 10%. And so just to prove that I've got some skin in the game too, what we've been doing over the last several years is that whenever we kind of reevaluate our giving, because we don't want our giving just to be something that we don't even miss it. We want it to cost us something. There's a difference between giving someone a gift that's just extra for you and giving someone as a gift that costs you something. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I want the gift that we give to God, I want us to be like, we didn't go on a trip because we do this and it's worth it to us, right? And so what we do is we evaluate our giving and we've just raised the percentage over time. And so we went from 10 to 11, from 11 to 12, and so on. And I'm not going to tell you where we stopped. We just keep going. But we're going to do that in this challenge too. We're going to up our percentage for the next 90 days. We're going to take that together and we're going to do it with you because I want you to know that we've got skin in the game too. You know what I'm saying? And listen, every time we've given, we've always found joy. Every time we found joy. I want you to know the joy of being a next level giver. I've never looked at our giving at the end of the year and be like, I regret that. That's never happened. I'm always like, look what we've been able to do. We celebrate. I'm like, look, wow, you know? It's like this cool thing. So here's what I want you to do. If this is your church and you love it, I want you to pick a percentage, take the challenge, and automate your giving. Do that. Now, some of you are in a place where you've got a good bit of stress and worry as it relates to giving and just life because of debt. And here's something that we want to offer you. There's this thing called Financial Peace University where you learn about how to do money and how to snowball your debt so you can start to get rid of those things. And we offer that class every time we have a life group semester, so a couple times a year. And it actually costs money. And we don't get any of the money. It goes straight to Financial Peace University, but it costs $100. If you commit to take the automation challenge, you take that step, and if you want to learn how to deal with debt and do money better, and you want to take Financial Peace University, we'll pay for it for you. Like, we'll pay the $100, which gives you access to all the materials, gets you in the class, and it gives you a lifetime membership and access to all the stuff that's going to help you make wise choices with your money going forward. We'll pay that for you because I want you to know that this isn't about getting something from you. This is about wanting something for you. And so I want everybody to consider and then take a step to sign up on a connection card or sign up online for the 90-day automation challenge and see what God could do. All right? Now, some of you did this last year. Some of you, even before that, you're like Tiff and I. You've just always given 10%. And I want to say this to you. Thank you. Thank you for being faithful with what God's given you. Right? I want to say that. And then two, I also want to challenge you because you're in the same boat that Tiff and I are in where you maybe need to reevaluate and say, do we even miss this? Does this even cross our mind? Or does this represent a sacrifice for me? And maybe you need to up your percentage. So just reevaluate that if that's you, okay? In closing, you might be wondering this. What's the Bible got to say about all this stuff, preacher? You didn't use one verse. You are correct. We didn't use very many verses. And there's a reason why. I don't think we really need a verse for this. Now, if you do need a verse, I do want to let you know there is one. There's actually a bunch of them, but here's one in particular, and you can read it by yourself. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 2-3. Paul, in these verses, lays a case or gives us a framework specifically giving clarity around how we should give to the church. He says we should have a plan to give back to God. He says we should give a percentage, and he says we should make our giving a priority. We should do it first. It's the first thing we do, not the last thing after see if there's anything left over. No, it's the first thing that we do. So it's all there, so you can look up that verse for yourself. But I don't think we really need a verse. And here's why. I didn't want you to look at the verse and be like, see, that's what that says, and if you do this, then God's going to do that. Preachers do all kind of weird things when they talk about money, right? As I thought about this, I had all kinds of options. I could have gone all kinds of different directions with this. Here's option number one. I could have said this, listen, if you'll give God 1, he'll give you 10. Ugh. I could have done that. If you give God 10, he'll give you 100. I could have done that. But listen, that's not even true. Like, you can look at some verses sideways and kind of get that, and there's a lot of preachers that have raised a lot of money because of that. But that's not even true. You know what I think? I think God's already given you 10. He's just trying to get the 1 back so he can do the work of the church here on this earth. He's already given you 100. Come on. Like, does he really have to give you 10 more? Are you serious? Not just that, he's already given us Jesus as the Savior of the world, forgive our sin and give us the hope of heaven. Does he have to give you 10 more bucks? And if any of those preachers really believed that, you know what they'd be doing? Every day they'd be giving away all of their dollars, but they don't. Because they'd be like, I give away all my dollars. God's going to give me 10. Come on. So that was option 1. I didn't do that because it's not true. Option 2, I could have said, man, if you'll give, then you'll have treasure in heaven. And that's absolutely true. That's in the scripture. We see that. But that's not what this is about. I could have said this. I could have said, Well, the Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it. And it's true, the Bible does say it. Now, irregardless of whether we believe it or not, it still settles it. But that's not what this is about either. I could have said, man, if you'll give or invest in God's kingdom, then that invites God to invest in your kingdom. In other words, if you would trust him with your money, then that invites God to be involved in the area of your finances. And that is absolutely true too. The scripture is very clear about that. But I didn't want to go there because I didn't want this to be if you do this, then God will do this. And like he's some kind of gumball machine. Right? I could have done this. I could have been like, friends, things are hard at the church. We're not going to be able to give coffee anymore. You have to bring your own coffee. I could have said things are so bad we have to let some staff go, and I could have brought the staff up. I could have brought Coop up. Could have brought Coop and his fiance up and just said, "Do you like Coop? This is Coop's last day. Unless you give in this offering, friends." But I didn't do that because that's not true. Very good. You know why I don't think we need a verse? Because this is what this is about. I believe with all my heart that the church is the hope of the world. And that's because the church has been given the message of Jesus to steward, because Jesus is the hope of the world. And I think that, what an amazing privilege it is that God would give us 10 to be able to manage, and that we would even have the opportunity to give a percentage of what he's allowed us to manage back into the hands of a church that's getting it done in our city. Listen, God may never give you anything for giving to our church, but I want you to know that it would still be worth it because of the thousands of lives that will be changed here, and because of the thousands and thousands of things that will be prevented because of what happens here. Investing in the church is the best possible investment that you could ever make in a community, and it's the best investment that you could ever make in the whole world. And if none of you do it, I would still do it. Till my dying day, I'll give 10% plus of everything God has given me or does give me from here till I die. And I'll tell you why. It's because when I was 12 years old, I found my chair. And when I contemplate and think about my propensity toward evil and sin and wrongdoing and treating others poorly and selfishness, I think about like my natural tendency toward those things. And if I were to go back in my life and extract all the goodness that God brought into my life because I found a chair, extract all the people that God brought into my life to speak words of truth and wisdom into my life, if I were to go back and extract all the truth that I learned sitting in a chair, if I were to go back and extract like all the positive things I were taught about God and faith and hope and life and not settling for something less than what God has for me and giving my life away for something cheaper than what God has planned and not knowing what I have to lose and giving up my family for some girl or giving up my future for some tryst or if I take all that stuff that I learned when I found my seat when I was 12, take away the influence of all the people God brought in my life because I sat in that chair, there's no telling where I'd be today. There's just no telling. It scares me. I am so thankful that when I was 12, a group of people who probably didn't have it to give gave sacrificially a percentage of their income to build a church where there was a chair with my name on it. So if you don't, I still will, right? It's not just for me, but I'll still give for every person in the city because they are worth it. Amen? God, thank you so much that you love us. You've called us to greater things. Give us wisdom to know what to do with what we heard, the courage to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.